So welcome everyone. Thank y'all so much for being here tonight for supper and for our time together. I want to tell you what's going to happen tonight. Tonight we're here to gather to celebrate God's work and to dream forward into God's future for Kern Church, and just to kind of check at where we are and the way things are going right now. We're looking at to live into our vision of being a church of people helping people belong, grow in faith, and make a difference. And I wish I had it right for you right now, because a couple years ago we made a vision statement. We created a vision document, and you're putting it to the test tonight. I want to tell you that. This is a good thing. In that vision document, it said, we will be a church where the sound of babies crying and children's laughter will be the norm on Sunday morning. And to that, we could add pulling down partitions. And when Jesus died, when Jesus' death was finalized, the temple curtain ripped open, and resurrection and new life was for everyone. Okay. But just celebrate that. So before we look forward, I want to go back just a little bit to 3 years ago. And some of you were here 3 years ago, and some of you weren't. Let's not play the piano, though. So those of you that were here 3 years ago know that there was some difficulties in our church at that time, and we made a decision 3 years ago to start praying. And we started praying together this prayer: God, release the resurrection power of your Holy Spirit to break through and bring miracles of new hopes and dreams and possibilities for our church, our community, and in my life, or reverse. Grant to us the boldness to follow Jesus into your new and unknown future. May your Spirit come and your will be done. Amen. And so since then, you and I have been praying for the boldness to follow Jesus into God's new and unknown future. And what I want to share with you tonight could be, and some have suggested to me, perhaps is some of that unknown future that you and I started praying about 3 years ago. And as we get started, we're first going to celebrate. And we're going to celebrate the movement of God in something that was very recent. In fact, something that happened in this space and right out there on Sunday is we served some barbecue. Who was here to eat barbecue? We served. I had this idea, and people humored me with it to connect with our community and to have a free community barbecue event. And I was hoping we might have 80 or 120 people here. We served at least 250 plates of barbecue, and there were between 300 and 350 people here celebrating, enjoying the evening, being with you, church, and experiencing your hospitality. One of the big hits of the night was our connection bingo, and many of you have shared with me how you were filling out your bingo cards and having conversations with people, and that's what the church is supposed to do, just to talk with people, to welcome people, and y'all did a great job. And so I want to say thank you. And but here's some pictures. So we've had some amazing cotton candy that was happening. That's John serving the cotton candy, and this was a picture of what this space looked like some that evening. And there's the dunk tank. AJ was in the dunk tank, and yes, I did end up in the dunk tank as well. And this is like self-deprecating humor at this point, but
you have to close your eyes. Oh, you better be worried, Will.
Oh, good.
She's gonna get you.
I have a picture. And that's because he said, oh, good.
What? George, I got you wet!
He got you wet.
So George was concerned about me. I believe But I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being the church. Thank you for opening your doors. This is something that you're good at, and I want to celebrate that. I also want to celebrate your generosity because you like barbecue, and you bought barbecue by the pound. We thought, well, maybe we could offset our cost of the event a little bit by selling some barbecue in addition to giving it all away. Well, let me just tell you that you bought $1,200 worth of barbecue, and this more than paid for all the food we gave away and probably paid for the whole event when we're all said and done. So give yourselves a round of applause. That's good. So thank you to everyone who made this possible. I also want to say thank you for your continued faithfulness and your generosity as a congregation. And I wasn't really sure how to put this in here because it's important to share, but I don't want it to be the focus of the night. And I don't want to forget about it. So I want to give just a brief financial update of where we are in the year. If you give to the church, you receive quarterly statements, and we'll have another one coming out soon. But if we look at the year as a whole and we look at our ministry budget, we budget on what we believe our expected revenue is going to be. So this is something that is new in the past few years of really trying to understand how do we expect revenue to come in through offerings and through other sources. And that's been a challenge over the past few years to try to understand that because we've seen a lot of change as a congregation over the past few years. And so I'm going to share with you a number that's a true number, but it may be a little misleading. And so when we look at the year, we just divide our total expected offering it by 12 to see where we're supposed to be in the middle of certain points in the year. But offerings and things don't always come in at such a normal rate like that. I get paid once a month, and so it's pretty expected that I'm going to write a check once a month. But not everybody gives that way, and so right now we are about $18,000 behind when it comes to our budgeted offering at this time of the year. However, when we look at actual expenses versus income, we've done a good job of managing expenses, and we're right about even. We're just like $1,300 behind when it comes to expenses versus income, which according to Mike is a pretty good place to be in at this time in the year. And so I just wanted to say that. And anybody at any time, if you want to look deeply at our financials, you're welcome at our finance meetings. You're also welcome just to call the church off and say, hey, I'm interested, and we've got the finance statements available. We'd love to show them to you, to walk you through them, to get more eyes on them if anybody's interested anytime. So that's just what I want to share. Our finance team continues to monitor these closely. We've got some more celebrations that we're going to do later on, but I also want to begin at this point kind of with a reality check about the room that we're sitting in. You see, here at Kern Church, we are blessed with an amazing facility. I mean, some of you were involved at different times and different phases of the building of this church. Some of those, or many of those who were involved with the building of this church in the 50s and the 60s and the 90s are no longer with us. But they have done an amazing job and you have been amazingly faithful. And so we have this building that we're blessed with. But the reality is that many parts of this building were built at a different time for a different time. And so there's challenges with our facility through the years. If you live in a home that was built during the war, you have challenges, right? Even if it was built afterwards. We all have challenges in the midst of this. And so we've been trying to dig in deeply and try to understand what are some of these challenges. And we've looked at our income, we've looked at our expenses, what it takes to keep the facility running, and we've come to really a cost per square foot basis to get a deep understanding of what it costs to maintain our congregation, not our congregation, this church facility. And so it costs $480 a day for this church to sit at 451 East Tennessee Avenue. That's right. Not 408, $480 a day for this church to sit here, regardless of if it's used, regardless of if it's empty. And that number is based on the actual maintenance cost. This number is based on utility cost, and it also includes deferred maintenance projects that we have to budget for every so often when a 30-year-old air conditioner quits working in the middle of July. And we have to figure out, what do we do with that, right? And so that includes that as well. Additionally, the room that we're in costs $420 a week just to be here, to operate. And if you look at the number of hours that this gym is occupied, we're really spending $375 a week for it to sit empty. And now that includes evening, like night times when we're all asleep and we expect it to be empty. But this room costs $375 a week sitting empty. And the reason I'm looking at this room and another room that I'm going to mention later or next is because it's coming up. But also, if we look at the education wing and the basement specifically, which is the most underutilized space in this whole church, it's used for basically 1 hour a week plus storage. And it costs $605 a week to be used for basically 1 hour a week. Now, I share with you these numbers not as a way to scare you or not as a way to make you concerned because you're doing an amazing job, but bring up these numbers because it's important to get an understanding of the reality of the facility that we're blessed with. Some of the numbers that also speak to this is we've been talking with some people to help us understand these numbers, and based on our giving patterns, they say that we are basically adequately funding about 10,000 square feet of a facility with our giving levels. Our overall facility is of 28,000 square feet. So we are adequately maintaining and caring for on the levels of about 10,000 square feet. So, okay, that's the bad news, perhaps. But it gives us an opportunity because it's not all bad news. In fact, it really gives us an opportunity. And so we have this amazing facility that was built and faithfully dedicated. But the question is, well, what about now? What do we do today in ministry today with our community? How can we honor the faithfulness of those who have come before us and also live to faithful ministry today? Because I have to imagine that those who worked hard and labored hard to build the education wing, to build the gym, didn't intend for them to sit empty most of the time, for them to be used at such a small level. And what if, instead of sitting empty most of the week, these spaces became even hubs for weekday ministry, connecting people, connecting families, connecting children with the life-changing love of Jesus? And here's why this matters, and here's why that we're here tonight to share, is because in Oak Ridge and in really many parts of our nation, there is a drastic need that families are facing for things like childcare. Childcare is a huge need in our community. In fact, you know this because you have our Camp Faith nursery school program that's caring for children as much as the state will allow us 2 days a week. And you've doubled the size of this program over the past couple years and doubled the amount of FaceTime that we have with kids up to the state maximum. We have in our community, this sounds like an urban legend, okay? But we have in our community, so I'm going to get real political now. I bet there's some people with differing opinions about when life begins, right? Like, does life begin at conception, or does life begin at birth, or does life begin at fetal viability, or whatever those things are? But one thing that we can all agree on is that life doesn't begin before conception, okay? But we have children who have yet to be conceived who are on waiting lists at daycares in our community. And the reason that I know this is because one of our church members, Julie Martin, is the director at First Church, First Steps preschool at First United Methodist, and she told us this. So it's not an urban legend. They have kids who have yet to be, I don't know how this all works, so like whatever. But that's how tight things are. We have wait lists across the board. We've tried to get, when we were looking for daycare for George, who's 3 now, we called Julie at First Steps, completely full, put him on a wait list. The only reason that we were able to find childcare the way that we were, he's in full-time childcare right now, is because a brand new daycare opened up last September called the Little Learning Lab over at Commerce Park. And because it was brand new, there was space. But as I was there and picking him up and taking him to daycare every single day throughout the weeks and the months that followed, I saw how cubby after cubby kept getting full. And this summer, we were looking for a place for Grace, for our 5-year-old, to be over the summer. And we called, well, how great would it be for them both to be at the same place? We have kids in 4 different schools in Oak Ridge. How great would it be at 2 of them to be at the same place? And they said, well, we love Grace, but we're going to have to put her on a waiting list. There's no room for her. So that daycare basically full and on a waiting list for different classrooms within a year. So the question is, what if Kern was able to meet this need? What if Kern was able to meet this need? To use our facility in a different way to bless families and also to live out our mission. And so in February, a group of our leaders from this church met, and they're like, you know what? A lot of people have talked at different times about expanding our daycare, expanding Camp Faith and maybe having a full-time program. And people have different opinions about this. They're like, oh, it's really hard to get licensed, or oh, our church is so old, we could never get licensed. But unless I'm wrong, nobody's ever actually looked at it. Nobody's ever actually spent the time to diligently explore that question. So a group of our leaders took a chance. And we had a special gift that was given for somebody that felt passionate about this. And we brought in some experts to help us with this, a group called Kid Venture. And Kid Venture has a successful track record of opening daycare programs, childcare programs in churches. And so they're not scared of old buildings. In fact, they're working with a church now, much smaller than Kern in the Washington State area, to do this very same thing. And so we reached out to them and we brought them in. They toured our facility, our church here, and they gave us a detailed ministry plan and business plan. They cast a vision for us of using open space to benefit the community through preschool programs, to turn the church into a vibrant ministry hub every single day of the week. And they gave us a detailed business and ministry plan for this. So some of you are dreamers and like to imagine. I hate being told to do this. But I want you to imagine something. Now, if you're one of those that likes to close their eyes and dream, close your eyes and dream. I'm always scared that somebody's behind me is going to do something, and so I don't like to close my eyes. I'm not going to ask you to do that. But just think, dream, imagine 3 years from now, 5 years from now. Imagine pulling into the parking lot any day of the week, seeing the parking lot full. You're knocking on the door trying to get in because the church is full too, with 100, 150 kids running around being cared for. Families coming in to pick their kids up, learning and growing in a space that's safe and welcoming and nurturing. And then imagine, what if on a Wednesday night like tonight, that families come to pick up their kids, and after working really hard, and trust me, daycare is expensive. Nobody's sending their kids to full-time daycare if they don't have their parents at home working. So what if we were able to then offer families a meal, a Wednesday night meal, just to share? And then imagine if in this space we had this meal to share with families who are picking up their kids, and 100 of them aren't going to stay, but what if 20% stayed? How many more tables would we have to set out here to eat dinner together? And maybe for some of the others, we send them with meals home. Then imagine welcoming families and bridging between the church and the daycare, caring for people with things you already do, with picnics, with hikes, with outings, with barbecue parties, with groups, with parenting classes, with parenting classes, with things that we're good with workshops. And then as you're imagining this, what I want you to know is that you're already doing this too. We don't have 100 or 150 kids that we're serving right now, but we have about 30 kids in Camp Faith. We see them 2 days a week. We have 18 families that are represented. And what I want you to know, at that barbecue blast we had yesterday on Sunday, half of our Camp Faith families were here. Half of the families that we're in ministry with during the week were here, sharing food with you, sharing space with you, excited to be here, excited to be welcomed into this space. I showed you pictures of John. John was running Cotton Candy. John's a Camp Faith dad. He now has a kindergarten. They're not in Camp Faith, but this is how they first came to church. And then they came to a breakfast with Santa last year, and they came to Christmas service and Easter service, and he was here serving right alongside you, right alongside people that were cooking barbecue. And then this coming Sunday, we have an amazing celebration as we're going to be baptizing one of our Camp Faith toddlers, and their families joining the church. I mean, you are already doing this, guys. You are already doing this. Imagine what it could look like if we weren't doing this with just 30 kids, but maybe with 100 or 150 students. So it's one thing for me to tell you about this, but I want you to hear it from one of our families. So I want to invite the Houchin family to come up. And the Houchins, they began at Kern. Their journey at Kern began with them in Camp Faith, and my younger kids are similar ages with their kids, and now they call Kern their church home, and they also help host their small group, our Belong group with our family, and so let's give them a welcome. Thanks so much, Greg and Megan and Gus for being here.
Being on this.
Yeah, way to be here, man. So, guys, can you share just a little bit about what first brought you, your family, to Camp Faith?
Our kids were both born during the pandemic. And so for the first couple of years of their life, we really kept them in a bubble. But we recognized after our daughter turned about 1 year old that she really needed socialization. She needed to be around kids her own age. So we sent my mother, who is a retired kindergarten teacher, 30 plus years of experience, out looking for us. And she looked at a lot of different options. We really wanted to go with parents stay out type option. We didn't need full-time childcare at the time. We had an au pair that was living with us and also taking care of the kids at home the rest of the time while we worked. But we sent my mother out, and she looked probably 5 or 6 different options in the area, mostly in the Oak Ridge area, but a little bit into Knoxville as well. And she came back and said, "You really need to go talk to Shanda at Camp Faith." And she showed us some pictures. I remember one of the pictures, it might have been a picture or a video, where the kids were in this space right here doing one of those parachutes up and down and playing with balls. And she zoomed around the space and she was like, what a great play area for the children. And she said a lot of these other areas, or these other parent stays out that she went to, did not have the same type of free play area. And she really liked that. She really thought it was good for their development. And so we did. We came on our own tour. We got to know Shanda. Shanda will probably tell you, I asked a lot of questions up front. I was very concerned with taking my kids outside of their bubble. I asked a lot of questions about how in the world she got kids to nap at the same time in the same room, because I thought it was going to be impossible.
Her kid was napping at the time. Mine was not.
No, but she was incredibly reassuring.
Yeah.
We got to go and visit the classrooms the kids would be in. We felt the love that the teachers were pouring into the kids, and we took that step.
Wow, I didn't even know that story with your mom, like spying and like scouting things out. That's awesome. Way to go, Shanda. So what was your experience as Camp Faith parents, and what made it meaningful for y'all?
Yeah, I'll just say that for us, coming to Camp Faith and having, kids to be able to play and socialize and really learn, and for them, they were able also to not just learn and develop and socialize, but also have the spiritual aspect as well. So, we were joyfully surprised when we came, sit around at dinner and the kids are teaching us prayers, that they've learned in Camp Faith. So for us, that was just amazing to see them learn and develop and socialize, but also adding in that spiritual aspect as well was really special for us.
And we're going to have Gus tell us about his experience when he was in Camp Faith with Miss Whitney and Miss Jenna. What did you like about Camp Faith, Gus?
I liked about Camp Faith playing.
You like playing.
I like playing in the gym the most.
You like playing in the gym the most?
Yes.
What toy was your favorite?
The go-kart.
That's awesome.
Many of you all have still seen him very active on these go-karts on Wednesdays.
So great job, Gus. Great job. Yeah, give Gus a round of applause. So how did being a part of Camp Faith open the door for you guys to connect more with the church?
It was really a natural progression for us. Greg and I knew that we wanted to raise our children in a church environment, but since they were born during COVID times and we didn't have a home church prior to COVID, going to Camp Faith, we knew that we got to meet you. We got to know Shanda was a member here, Whitney was a member here, and you all invited us. Why don't you come try on a Sunday? And it was just a really easy, natural progression. Our kids already felt incredibly comfortable here. With kids, sometimes when they're put into a new environment, like if you were to take them just cold turkey into a Sunday school class that they'd never been into, that could be a very scary experience for them. And so being able to take them into a Sunday school class that they already did Camp Faith in, into a gym that they were already very comfortable with, into sanctuary space that they were used to walking through, it was very natural for them and very natural for us to feel comfortable because we'd already been coming here 2 days a week.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing, guys. Let's give it up for them. Way to go, Gus. Good job, dude. All right, thanks so much. Yeah, church, this is what it looks like. This is what it looks like when when child care ministry bridges between, child care, caring for kids, and families into the life of the church. And what I hope that you're beginning to see is that you know how to do this. And I believe, I honestly believe this, is that you know how to do this better than a lot of other churches that I know. I have a lot of colleagues who are pastors who have daycare ministries at their churches, and the number of just struggles between the daycare and the church, it's dramatic. And there are oftentimes the daycare is not supportive of the church is not supportive of the daycare, but you've got something different here. You've got a DNA and that is building into this. And Shanda is a big part of that, to making sure that families feel welcome. And I just want to say that y'all should give yourselves some credit here because it's really a powerful thing. So let's give it up, yeah. Okay, so for those of you that are dreamers, you got that scratch, okay? Now, some of you are like, okay, all right, let's get along with this. This is a good idea. What are the numbers, right? What does this look like on a numbers basis? And I'm right there with you because I love the dreaming, I love the vision, but it's also important to look at numbers and look at like reality and physical space. And so according to Kid Ventures assessment, they toured our space, and those of us that were receiving their report were shocked, because they said, you've got a great space and it's not going to need much work. You could have seen my jaw hit the floor, okay? Like, I was like, and we do have a great space, and we've already talked about that, but realizing that it's already ready in a lot of ways to care for kids. A strong facility, limited updates needed. And so the scope of the work is that their assessment is that we could care for up to about 150 kids between a daycare, and that is infants to 5-year-olds, like preschool, between a daycare and then a before and after school program, including a summer camp for school-age children. And so these two things are two things that are very needed in our community. These are also two ministry plans, two programs that can be housed under the same license for those that are interested in that. And the space that we're looking at is one, using the basement, the first level of the education wing of the church as a daycare space. And we can walk through that space. If anyone wants to walk through that space at any time, we can walk through that space. So using that, which is only used right now about 1 hour a week, so that's obvious in a lot of ways. Really great rooms down there. And then using this space as the before and the after school program space. And kind of creating that around here. And so I want to share, so the next thing that they shared with us is like, what can we expect as far as rolling this out, as far as looking at capacity, as far as attracting students, attracting families, and what does it look like on a revenue and a profit basis? Because one of the reasons to really look into this is yes, for this deep need, but it's also to try to build some sustainable revenue into our church. I shared how some outside revenue, I shared how our spaces we're underfunding our spaces. And so this is not just a dollars and cents thing, it's a ministry thing, but it's a reality as well. And so I'm going to show you this slide that looks at kind of their projections based on market analysis, based on our facility of what they expect. And so the upper end is about 150 kids, but they're conservative. They say these are conservative estimates. And I'll remind you that George's daycare was full within a year, and so I'm just like blown away by that. And but their conservative assessment is that within the first year, we could expect to be about 30% capacity, having about 40 children in our care. That's between the daycare and then the before and after school program, with a net profit of around $80,000. And all of these numbers are net profit numbers. So that means that these are not the overall gross revenue. That means that we're already paying teacher salaries, we're already paying all expenses, we're paying for maintenance, we're paying for lawn care, we're paying for landscaping, paying for all the things that are associated with having a welcoming space and caring for, and then having this net revenue at the end of the day. And then the second year, they say that they're expecting about 50% capacity, which is about 76 children, with a net revenue of about $200,000. And then by year 3, really operating at an 80% capacity, about 118 children, with a net revenue of about $400,000. To give you some perspective, right now, our current ministry budget outside of Camp Faith is about $375,000. And so this is a substantial opportunity. It's a substantial amount of income we're looking at. When we're talking about at least this $400,000 net profit, we're talking about net or gross revenue being around $1.6 million, which is a tremendous increase in the amount of revenue and expenses involved. And so here's a few things that this means. This means these numbers means creating an excellent licensed child care program from the beginning. It has to be excellent, has to be licensed, otherwise we'll go to jail or whatever. But it has to be excellent. So we from the very get-go, this leadership team said, if we're going to do this, we're going to create an excellent program. And I believe that we have the makings to have the best program in all of Oak Ridge, all of Anderson County. Well, we have the makings to have the best program in the state, to be honest, because we're in Oak Ridge, and Oak Ridge always think we already know we're the best at everything. So if we're the best in Oak Ridge, we're the best in the state. I mean, you don't have to ask anybody. When I came to be the pastor of the church here, was meeting with the SPR and talking about how good the schools were here, and Robbins, who's our district superintendent, said, "Yeah, these are some of the best schools in the state." And somebody, I don't know who it was, spoke up and said, "No, they're the best. Not some of the best. They are the best." Anyways, why did I share that? I did. So creating an excellent program. This also means hiring and training excellent staff at competitive rates. We've seen that at the little learning lab that's opened up, and they're part of the Emory Valley Center, and I think they are operating with competitive rates, and they're bringing in some really good teachers, and so I believe that we can do that too. I mean, they've demonstrated that, and I believe that we can demonstrate that as well. It also means facility updates are needed. So yes, the facility is great, but there's also facility updates are needed, and they basically have to do with fire safety and plumbing. Fire safety and plumbing. And these are really kind of things that we need or we should be taking seriously regardless of if we have a daycare program at all. One, regarding the plumbing, we're having to call plumbers in here to jet out the lines like every quarter or every other month, and it costs $700 a shot every time that happens. So that's a cost that goes into that cost per square foot thing. But also it's important to have a facility that is safe, that is welcoming. And our current standards are different than they were in the early 1960s when that was built. And we do know, though, that this facility here in the gym, the fire inspector said that we could basically open this as is. Now, we probably should paint a little bit and, do a couple things, but it's not going to require extensive work in here. We could basically open this as is in this space. And so if you're interested in these numbers, I know that there's at least somebody in here thinking, well, what's this going to cost? If not, we can go home. But somebody in here at least is thinking, well, what's this going to cost? And I want to say a couple of things. One is that we have some really good estimates on some of the costs, because these are program costs. These are costs about starting a daycare that we got from different places. And so firstly, from our Kid Venture friends that helped us with this ministry and business plan, it's going to cost between $40,000 and $90,000 to set up classrooms for all these kids. Startup staffing. I've got all of this stuff in detail, and so if anybody wants to look at this in detail, just let me know, and we can we can have it. Also, these numbers you're going to get later on, and I'll explain that later, so you don't have to try to write all this down. So startup staffing being around $26,000 to $40,000. Architect, we have met with 2 architectural firms. We've signed nothing, but we got a sense that architectural renderings will cost around $10,000 to $24,000. And so these are some of the things that we know. But when it comes to construction costs, we do not have a master construction plan. We do not have a master plan. We do not have architectural drawings because they cost $10,000 to $24,000. And we want you to be involved and not to waste money, right? And so this is your church and your potential for building a legacy and lasting ministry. And so we only have some educated guesses. And they're kind of big. Some of them are kind of big numbers. And so the best, talking to our team, I even hate a little bit representing these numbers because they are educated guesses. But talking with our team, we believe that the fire safety and kind of code work would be anywhere the range of $200,000 to $400,000. Perhaps the plumbing enhancement around $30,000. The church sign needs updating around $15,000. And then we have another issue, which was HVAC. And so This unit in here, which if we're having an after-school and before and after-school program in here, we know that if this unit were to go out in the middle of the summer, it would be really hard to have kids in here. And if it were to go out in the middle of winter, it'd be really hard to have kids in here. And this unit is how old, Mike? 28 years old. The same is true in the sanctuary between the boiler and the chilling tower. They're older than that. And so this is kind of a conservative estimate on what it would cost to replace both of these. We've had these priced out at different times, about $200,000 perhaps for the HVAC. And so I know that these is like perhaps for some could have sticker shock, but these are large numbers. But the thing that makes me excited about some of these numbers is that when you had to raise money a few years ago to paint the church got painted. And guess what? It's going to need to get painted again at some point. But the money you spent on painting the church went into painting the church and paying the painters, which you should do. But when we're looking at this project, we're talking about investing in a ministry that has a return on investment in lives that are connected and that have a safe place. But we're also looking at a financial return on investment as well. That we are creating additional revenue so that we can properly fund the maintenance of this facility, so that we can properly fund not 10,000 square feet of this church facility, but 28,000 square feet of this church facility. And so that's what makes me kind of excited about this, because I know that if I'm going to give to this project, we can pay ourselves back to then have a larger return in the future. So a few points that I want to share is that another question a question that has come up is, well, is this going to be a ministry of the church, or is this going to be a separate entity and a separate legal entity? This is an important legal question. Our trustees are working with this, exploring with an attorney and advisors on the best way to approach this governance. Some people that had one opinion about this has changed, and so we're really trying to get a good answer there. But whatever direction we go, we're going to build it into transparency and clear governance and clear lines just all the way around. Additionally, another thing that has come up in the middle of these conversations is, yes, this is, we're looking at a lot of, potential revenue, but this is not a business. Like, this is not primarily a business. We are in the business of ministry, of caring for people. And so we have people on our team that have a commitment to exploring accessibility and affordability when it comes to our child care, whether that's through scholarships or partnerships or whatever the case may be. I had some more questions. 6, 7. And I'm supposed to invite Shannon to come up, but thanks. Oh, it was just on the back side of that sheet, 5, 6. Anyways, so I know that you all have questions, but we've already gotten a lot of questions. And so we have gotten those that one of the things that we're exploring is a capital campaign, which would be a 3-year capital campaign probably to fund much of this cost. And so we, in that effort, our leadership has brought in a person by the name of Rick Villardo from Horizon Stewardship to do a feasibility study, which is what we're in the midst of right now. Really a feasibility study on if it's feasible for us to go down this road financially, and if we can look at it as a capital campaign project. And so what we had is had a couple weeks ago, we had a first impressions gathering where some of our leaders got together to hear some of this stuff, not all of this, but some of this, and to have some conversation about it. And so we got a lot of questions and a lot of points of conversation that came up, and we compiled all that. And so we're going to go to, instead of just opening to questions right now, I want to go to some frequently asked questions that many of you have already asked. And so to help us do that is I want to invite Shanda to come up, because one of the big questions that has been asked this whole time is, what about licensing and what about staffing? Because licensing for some people is a really scary thing, because you're dealing with the state, you're dealing with regulations. And Shanda has been working in Camp Faith for many years, which is not a licensed program, but has worked in licensed facilities and has helped start them before. And so be careful as you walk up, because we're a church where the sound of children's laughter and pulling over partitions is common on Sunday evening. So thanks for being here. Let's give Shanda a round of applause. So Shanda, you've led Camp Faith for many years, and you've been involved with this whole process. Can you tell us just briefly a little bit about what's involved with getting licensed for a full-time daycare?
Well, if I remember correctly, the first time that Will and I had a serious conversation about what it would look like to open a full-time licensed daycare, and I said, a lot. And he said, can you be more specific? And I said, when I know that you're serious, I'll go into detail. So after lots of conversation and prayers and really praying, and doors started opening, and we had some serious conversation. And I said, are you ready for a lot? And he said, sure. So being state licensed is a lot. It is a lot of requirements. It is a lot of time spent, state involved, health department involved, city codes involved, fire department involved. There's a lot of involvement. We have done a lot of work already, and we are to the step now that the next step with that is me attending an orientation. Then we will do a pre-screening. Then I will attend a small business academy. Then the special program people will come and they will do a walkthrough with me. After that point, we'll do a second walkthrough with the special program people and with DHS, with the state fire marshal, and the health department. And then from that point, when we have met all the requirements, then we will be state licensed. And once you receive the state license, you are monitored throughout the year. So the state comes in 2 announced visits, and they can do up to as many unannounced visits as they choose to do.
And so my understanding is that there's, it's not secret what involves licensing. They give you everything. And so they're not holding it in some, Ark of the Covenant thing and have to have Indiana Jones. They give it to you. Sometimes we're dealing with the state. Sometimes it's been hard to get things. I think that's true. So what gives you the confidence that we at Kern are in a good position to meet their requirements?
Well, for one, like you said earlier, our church, you all, the congregation, the people, is the main thing. I've heard many times since the first time I walked through the doors 14 years ago, we are a church of people loving people. And, to be able to open our doors to more families in this community and be able to provide a safe and fun environment for all of these kids that are just have nowhere to go. It's just amazing. And we're in a great location. There's only 6 full-time child care centers in this area. and the need is tremendous.
One of the things that I learned and I was surprised with, many places in our community don't take infants. And so some places don't even start till they're like 3 years old.
Correct. There's only 2 currently that take infants.
And so that is something that we would be looking at serving. So, kind of related to that is one of the other big questions related to this is the people have about staffing. So what would be our plan to attract and retain great teachers, great staff?
So as most people know, if you have ever been in a position where you are hiring people, it is a lot of work, it is a challenge. However, with hiring teachers to work in a licensed facility, there are lots of requirements that have to be met in order for them to be hired for state licensing. On top of that being said, I have been told in the past 14 years since I've been here at Camp Faith, and my staff turnover rate has been extremely low. The only teachers that I have ever had to replace are ones who have moved away from this area. I'm picky. You have to be picky on who you are hiring to work with children, and you have to do your research. Being competitive, obviously with the economy is another big thing. Building relationships with your staff is huge, and I think that's the best way to go about it.
Yeah, thank you. What excites you the most about leading this potential expansion in daycare?
Oh
childcare?
gosh.
You don't have much time.
Lots of things.
Most.
Being able to provide a fun and safe environment for kids and families.
Yeah, thanks. Give it up for Shanda. Thanks so much, Shanda. So some of the other questions that have come up is, what about other daycares in our community? I think we've handled that one and talked about some of the other daycares and what's going on, and just the need is still there. One of the other questions that has come up is, what if we don't meet our enrollment projections or we hit roadblocks? I mean, let's be very clear. We're not going to launch at 100% capacity. That's not something that's going to happen. But I believe that as we launch in phases, that we have the opportunity to build there. And so we can grow at a pace that's sustainable, that's financially sustainable. And if at any point we find that something isn't financially sustainable, that we can adjust and think. The building improvements, the HVAC stuff, these are investments that we're probably going to, at least some of them, are probably going to have to make anyways, whether or not the daycare happens. And so a big question is, can we afford this? This is a question that has come up. Surprise, surprise, perhaps. We're talking about some big numbers. And like I mentioned earlier, we are currently in a feasibility study that is looking at this very, very same question. We're exploring the feasibility of a capital campaign to help fund some or most of these improvements, and to get our facility up to modern standards and to keep the HVAC running, which I'm a big fan of. Yeah. and then we also, of course, on the affordability question, we talked about already the return on investment, being able to use this as a catalyst to invest in other ways of keeping the facility as well up. And so we believe it is sustainable and that it is missional. And then another question that's come up is what about the timing here? I mean, that's a big question, I think. And so this facility here is close to ready to go. I mean, we need some paint. There's some other things that we could do to make this welcoming for before and after school care program. So Shanda's already started the process towards licensing, and so it's within the realm of possibility that we could have a before and after school program in the spring or summer of next year, like as soon as that. The daycare is going to depend on any type of pending construction, because we have to get the building up to speed, up to the safety on the fire codes and stuff. And then the last question that I want to share is, what about the impact to our current ministries? I mean, that's a big question. This facility, what I want you to know, is still our church home. This is still our church home. The daycare, the intention is the daycare will add ministry, not take away ministry. When I used to talk about my family, when it was growing at different phases, I had 2 kids and I felt like my heart was full and I was like, there's no extra room. But then we had a 3rd kid and I was like, well, something has grown, and eventually realized that love is kind of like a gas. With kids, gases come in different shapes and sizes, but gas, it expands to fill the volume of the container that it's stored in. And so love can keep expanding because love is like a gas, and ministry is kind of like that too, that it can keep expanding as long as we don't put constraints on it to bless more people. And so this creates new bridges to invite families into meals and groups and worships. Details will need to be worked out, but we remain committed to ensuring that our church only grows as a ministry hub. So we'll need to find one thing that perhaps is obvious is looking at the basement. We will need to find new space for our youth ministry room. That is a for sure thing that will need to happen. And we'll need to find a new place for some storage. But groups that currently use our space will be able to continue to use our space with scheduling that respects, church life and childcare all along the way. And so we are exploring the feasibility of a capital campaign to gain support around this and to move into God's new future for Kern Church. And so I want to leave you, and I'll take some questions, but what can you do? I'm not about to ask for money right now, but what can you do? The first thing you can do is pray. And I don't mean that in any crass or cavalier way. I mean it with all sincerity, because the only reason that we're here tonight is because you started praying 3 years ago for God to do a miracle in our midst. And God showed up, friends. And I could preach all night on that, but y'all want to go home. So pray. Pray for our church. Pray for our community. Pray for the kids and the families who are struggling and having to make choices between going to work and not having a safe place to have their kids, who are lonely because they don't have friends and they need a community of faith even though they don't yet know it. Pray for them. And then I also want you to take a survey. And this survey, if you were, there's some people that had an interview with Rick. If you had an interview, you don't need to take the survey. You've already done it. But if you haven't had an interview, if you went to the first impressions gathering, you need to take the survey unless you also had an interview. Okay, so that clears up hopefully for folks. But everybody, we want to hear from our whole church, and so we're going to be sharing the interview link on Friday. Please take time to read over the case study. It will share those numbers, those big numbers. Maybe they're scary, maybe they're exciting. It'll share those big numbers. If you want to look more closely at the Kid Venture report, the ministry and business plan, just reply to any of those emails and say, Will, I want to look more at this. I want to look with you at this, and I'll be happy to open the books for you on this. And so if you have any questions, but please take this survey, and it's going to be open for just a couple weeks, over 2 weekends. But take this survey and give your feedback for the capital campaign. Bring the questions that you have to that. This is your chance to really shape the future, because none of this is shaped in stone. When we think about ministry and we think about people being called into ministry, some places people say, God called me, and so they stand up and they start preaching. But God never calls without other people also affirming. And so that God calls and God leads, but God also sends the Holy Spirit to bring affirmations. And so what I believe is, I believe with all of my heart that God is calling us to this. But I also believe that I've been wrong before. Maybe once. Today or this hour. But I also believe that God isn't sending me out to do this by myself, that this is our project. And so if it truly is our project, the Spirit will affirm that sense in you, and that's why I want you to complete this survey. So now, just want to stop talking. We've talked for a long time. What questions remain? Do anybody have any questions? Yeah, Ann. So the question was, what ages would this before and after school program be? And Shanda shared that for licensing, it goes up to age 12. So it would depend on our program and on the licensing there. Other questions? Yeah, Tammy. So Tammy just asked, when you have two organizations who are sharing space, that there's going to be scheduling conflicts that will arise. How would we handle that? And I think that is obviously true. Well, one thing that's important is keeping the church calendar sacrosanct. So we have to be even better at the church calendar and scheduling things. Two is making sure that the potential daycare and childcare ministry and the church are aligned in mission and ministry. Because what happens too often in churches that colleagues are a part of is that they become working at cross purposes. And so we're working on a structural basis and also on a programming and ministry basis to help ensure that we're working together in mission and ministry. And so when conflicts arise, then we would have to figure that out. But keeping that church calendar clear is I think one of the first things, and then also making sure that we're not creating silos of different organizations. Even if the daycare ends up being a separate actual legal entity from the church, which is an open question, then making sure that we're working together for the same purpose, so we have mission and vision together, is important. Okay, so Tammy just brought up one of the first conflicts that we have is the Wednesday night fellowship supper. And you're right. You're right. And so scheduling is important, and we will have to make adjustments as needed. Would you rather, would you rather have a Wednesday night supper that starts at 5:30 that feeds 40 to 50 people? That's where we are right now, that starts at 5:30. Or would you rather have a Wednesday night supper that perhaps starts at 6 o'clock that feeds 40 or 50 people plus another 50 people who are families from the daycare? So yes, it's a challenge, but it also gives us the opportunity to think about creative ways to address those challenges for greater impact. That's the way I see something like Wednesday night. Questions? Other questions? Yeah, Terry. Okay, so Terry's asking about this slide, startup staffing and salary. What is that? This could be a couple of things. So Terry said, what is startup staffing and salary? One is so like Shanda, for example, right now works as the family ministry director and also as the director of Camp Faith. And she's paid part ways and part places. I believe that as we move into this program, that we're going to need a full-time person working on this project. So what this includes is money to pay that salary out of project funds prior to receiving revenue. So that would free. For example, if Shanda's transitioning to work full-time on this project, we've got green lights all the way around, we could pay that salary out of project funds and then also ensure that continuity in the church and be able to backfill and hire somebody to be our family ministry director so we're not suffering from a lack of staffing on that side. So I don't even know if I've talked to SPR about that, but that's my idea, and that's what that means. What's the anticipated additional staff going into the first year for the daycare?
Yeah, first year, what are you planning on building out that first 30?
Okay, so I've got this is how detailed this whole plan is, and we could. If you've got more questions like that, let's talk offline. But let's answer this one. So the first year, about 30% capacity. Talking about a director, 2 full-time lead teachers, 2 full-time assistant teachers, 2 part-time aides, and 1 part-time before and after school care teacher. So yeah, that's what that's like. So add that up. Other questions? Yeah. It's good. So we could start the light. This space is okay by the fire inspector informally as is, more or less. And so we are pursuing licensing this space first so that we could launch the before and after school program, not the preschool, but the before and after school program first before the construction of the daycare side. Okay, Dean, you're asking about the ratio of infant to teacher, and that's all spelled out by the state of what's required. And I don't know that I have that in front of me, but it's like 1 to 6 for infants, and then that's why infants are so expensive to like care for, and why so few places have it. And then it goes up from there. And so by the time they're in preschool, it's a lot higher than it is at the infant age. But I believe infant age is like 1 to 6 or something like that. Am I right? 1 to 3. Okay. So we're having infant classrooms of 6 with 2 teachers in there. That's what that conversation is. Other questions? There are more questions, and you're holding them, and you're tired, and you're ready to leave and go out, and that's great. I'm going to stick around and help clean up and help answer any questions. So if anybody has questions that will get me out of cleaning up, let's talk, and then we can take my picture and like that I'm like doing things that are important. But before we leave, I want us to do something really quickly. Friends, this is our chance to reach the next generation for Christ, for Kern, for our community. This is our chance. This is perhaps the best chance we have, at least some on our leadership team believe, for the future of our church to grow sustainably and to reach more people for the cause of Christ. And so I want to invite you to pray, to take the survey. And I also believe that if the Spirit talks to you in a way that is contrary to what we've presented tonight, or if the Spirit talks to you in a way that says, well, I see a hole there, I want you to listen to the Spirit talking to you. Make sure it's the Spirit of God and not, some other kind of spirit. But listen, like the Spirit of Jack Daniels or what. That's on video. I shouldn't have said that. But, make sure like the Spirit of God listening to you. But let that be known. Talk to me about it. Talk to somebody about that, because that could be exactly what blind spot we have and what we need. And so I want you to pray. And as we leave, I want to invite everybody to join us in praying our breakthrough prayer together. And if you don't know this, the words are on the screen, and we're gonna pray this prayer together, because I believe that God is going to show us what this new and unknown future is. And I'm praying for the boldness to walk into it, even if it doesn't look exactly like I think it will today. So let's pray this together. God, release the resurrection power of your Holy Spirit to break through and bring miracles of new hopes, dreams, and possibilities for our church, in my life, and our community. Grant to us your boldness to follow Jesus into your new and unknown future. May your Spirit come and your will be done. Amen. God bless you all. It is such a privilege to be your pastor. I mean that. I'm proud of you.